Will Caitlin Clark win the MVP this year, Caroline?
Season starts this weekend. Woohoo! 30th year of the W. Um, I picked Caitlin Clark to win MVP. If you want to go back, Cassandra Negley and I did a full breakdown on all of our preseason predictions, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Finals predictions. You can find all of that on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page and on your preferred podcast platform. Shameless plug there. I did pick Caitlin Clark to win MVP for a couple of reasons. One, to win MVP, you have to have a competitive basketball team. You have to be on a postseason playoff team that looks like a legitimate championship contender. The Fever were one game away from the WNBA Finals last year without Sophie Cunningham, without Ari McDonald, without Sydney Colson, without Caitlin Clark, and for a couple of games without MVP candidate Kelsey Mitchell. So if you would assume that all of those players are back and healthy, Caitlin Clark is back and healthy, and the Fever can find themselves right back where they were. So she checks that box. We know Caitlin Clark can pack a box score. We know that Caitlin Clark can put up some gaudy numbers. We know that Caitlin Clark makes those pop off the page from the logo 3-point shots. That kind of impact matters when you're talking about most valuable player. I also think, and it is not bad or unfair to point out, cultural impact. Let's remember that these are humans that vote on this award, that there are inherent human biases that exist, whether you're the most impartial reporter in the whole entire world, there is still a bias that exists when you are a human being. Caitlin Clark will always be a headline. Caitlin Clark will always command the conversations around the WNBA. Caitlin Clark will always be there anytime any conversation is surrounding women's basketball. I do think that matters. And I'll also be honest with everybody. I think that if I was a betting woman, and I said this on Hoops 360, if I was a betting woman, I would probably bet on A'ja Wilson. Pretty safe bet, right? 4-time MVP. Has won 3 championships in the last 4 years. She's the best player on the planet. Like, yeah, I would say that's the safest bet if you're trying to make a little bit of money. But what's the fun in that? I picked Caitlin Clark to win MVP because it was just something that was a little bit different. So I think that, Caitlin Clark, you're seeing in the Vegas odds. And I think that she checks all of those boxes of being an MVP caliber player.
So there is no bigger star in the WNBA than Caitlin Clark. There are very few stars in all of sports that are more important than Caitlin Clark or more recognizable than Caitlin Clark. You cannot deny the greatness of Caitlin Clark. However, to me, as you just mentioned, the best player in the WNBA is on the best team in the WNBA, that has the best coach in the WNBA, that has the best practice facilities in the WNBA, that is a living, breathing, eating dynasty right now, and that's the Vegas Aces. That's A'ja Wilson. That's Becky Hammon. You go up and down the list. There is absolutely no reason, even with the modern construct that we now have of the new collective bargaining agreement, nothing about my opinion about Vegas has changed. They are the most dominant team in the WNBA. There is no reason, as their roster is currently constructed, to think that they won't be back in and win the finals, to win a championship. We ask all the time what success or failure is. Anything short of a championship for Vegas is a failure simply because they do it over and over and over again. And they do it because they have the best player in the world. They do it also because they have the best player in the world that nobody can stop. There just isn't a person in the league that can truly match up with A'ja Wilson. And because of the proximity she plays to the rim, like, you can have a bad shooting night. I know Caitlin almost never does, but you can have a bad shooting night. Not likely for A'ja Wilson. On top of that, you got to be healthy for the grind. How often have we seen Caitlin Clark make it through a season healthy? So certainly I never wish injury on anybody, but if I'm betting my money right now on who I think is going to be the most dominant team, on the most dominant player, I should say, on the most dominant team that's most likely to win a championship and also more likely to stay healthy throughout the duration of the season, I am describing A'ja Wilson. And I know A'ja Wilson does not move the needle to people that don't pay attention to the W the same way Caitlin Clark does. And I understand why Caitlin winning an MVP is important. I really do. I just think that through that importance, we can't overlook greatness. Right now, again, Vegas has given us a dynasty, like it or not. A'ja Wilson belongs on the Mount Rushmore all-time of the greatest WNBA players we've ever seen, like it or not. And she's in her prime on a team that's poised to win a championship. I can't find math that doesn't send A'ja Wilson to the MVP, because I can't find math that doesn't have her the best player on the best team, Caroline. So I hear you too that there's going to be a ton of momentum for Caitlin. I just think A'ja right now is a better player on a better team.
I don't argue with any of that. Like, there's nothing that I disagree. Like, me saying that picking Caitlin Clark to win MVP is not because I hate A'ja Wilson. Okay, it's not because I hate the Las Vegas Aces. Everybody, let's calm down a little bit. Like, I do not have any pushback to that. The Las Vegas Aces are a dynasty. A'ja Wilson is one of the greatest players in the history of the WNBA, and she's still writing her legacy. The reason why we saw the odds up there momentarily, or just a moment ago, Brianna Stewart is up there in MVP odds. I think Sabrina Ionescu can also belong in the MVP conversation. The reason why I didn't pick Stewie or Sabrina Ionescu to win MVP is because both of them are MVP candidates. And then when you throw in Jonquel Jones into the mix as well, when you throw Satu Sabli into the mix and you signing for the New York Liberty, that team is just so stacked. And when you have players that are clearly far and beyond the best players on their team, like A'ja is for the Aces, like Fee is for the Minnesota Lynx, it's just that not one of them can clearly, in my opinion, emerge as the MVP when you have a stacked super team and each player has their own kind of role carved out for them. So that's the only reason why, like, if you want to bet on this award, I wouldn't bet on Stewie or Sabrina, because both of them are MVP caliber players, and it's almost like they're canceling each other out by competing with one another.
Well, and look, I mean, I think sometimes we expect historic things, right? Like A'ja averaged 26.8 in 2024. That's the highest points per game in a season. 26.8 in 2024. I think to be an MVP, Caitlin would have to top that. Caitlin would have to put up record numbers. And my concern is I'm not sure usage necessarily allows that to happen. Like, our expectation for Caitlin is that she's the Michael Jordan of the WNBA, which means the expectation is that she's constantly the scoring leader. And I just don't know the way that Indiana runs and the way that their offense goes, and also by nature of the positions they play and the way that they score, I don't know that the usage rate's going to allow that to happen for her, Caroline.
Yeah, I don't think that Caitlin has to top Asia's 26.8 points per game in 2024 to be the MVP. Because, like, you're not comparing a player in 2026 to what somebody did in 2024. Like, you're comparing that player to the rest of the league and the landscape of the rest of the league. But I'm with you. Like, A'ja Wilson is used more than any other player in the WNBA. A'ja Wilson has far and beyond the highest usage rates in the entire league. I think if the Fever were smart, they would bring Caitlin along slowly. Caitlin's been dealing with a lot of soft tissue injuries. And so I think that the Fever are going to be very strategic in the way that they use Caitlin. She's not going to be out there playing like 95% of individual games, especially if the Indiana Fever are up big or down big. I just think the Fever are going to be more strategic with her usage. And also, let's remember, Kelsey Mitchell was an MVP finalist last year. So Kelsey Mitchell is also going to be a focal point of this team. And it's not just Caitlin Clark and everybody else. There are a lot of other secondary or even, let's just say, primary scorers. Like, Kelsey Mitchell was the cog of that Indiana Fever team this past season. So I think that with, the supplemental scoring on the Indiana Fever, and also the fact that I think the Fever should be very strategic in their usage of Caitlin, that the 26.8 threshold, I wouldn't bet on Caitlin topping that, just because I don't think her usage is going to be the same as A'ja's period, but especially A'ja's in 2024 when she set that benchmark of nearly 27 points per game.
I also weirdly think, as much as we look today and we talk about the MVPs and we talk about the accolades, when you're the star that Caitlin is, if your team goes out and wins, if your team is in this thing in the end, you sort of win. Like, I struggle to put this, like, it's failure or success based on whether or not she gets an MVP. Like, that to me feels like such a weird line in the sand. Like, there's nothing that's going to happen, literally nothing that will happen this year that will change the fact that Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in the sport, right? So I just think that to continue that, what's best for Caitlin and what's best for this team and what's best for the W, what's best for everybody involved in these Caitlin conversations is for Indiana to be great. And that's a really simple answer to a complex conversation. I struggle to, I know we have MVP expectations, but I think we also need to understand that even above and beyond personal accolades, Caitlin will always be defined for, the exposure that she has and the way that we view her and the way that we view Indiana.